Mohammad, welcome. Thank you very much for giving up your time. Very quick introduction for you. So Mohammed's a senior multi-channel strategist for Google and specialises in automotive. He's been with Google for 5 years. Thank you very much for giving up your time. I know a lot of people in the room want to hear what you've got to say. If you've got any questions for Mohammad, please feel free to send them over via Slido, as you have been doing through the day. But I mean, let's start with just a little bit of an overview of the used car market and the trends that Google has been seeing. What are you seeing in the market?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me, James. Before I go into that, this is the last session, so I just wanted to give a big hand to the two Jameses and everyone here who's made an excellent day of this today.
Oh, thank you.
It's my first time here, and I hope it's not my last, but we'll see in half an hour again, is what I say.
Very kind of you.
So in terms of the used car market, I think it's really tough to add on to what I've heard from today. It's been so many incredible insights. There are 3 things I want to briefly touch upon. And one of them, the first one, I think everyone can guess it's been the word of the day, omnichannel, right? And the one key thing I want to add to this is that it's happening on both ends of the used car market. So, for example, yesterday I had the fortune of visiting Aston Martin just down the road, and I was discussing with some folks from there how it would be a shame if someone bought an Aston Martin online, right, without experiencing their in-person materials, colors, and whatnot. But equally, on the other end of the market, if we look at the more affordable side, put your hands up here if someone has once come to you and asked them, can you come with me to look at this car I'm thinking of buying? Has anyone been asked that? Yeah, most people. Keep your hands up if you sold them one of your cars. Okay, no one's that cheeky then. So multi-channel, omni-channel is really being an incredible part of the used car experience, especially with younger audiences. And that's one thing that I think hasn't actually been touched upon today that I was quite surprised about, which is looking at younger audiences. They are your consumers of the future, right? At all levels, from the more affordable level, when it comes to smaller, cheaper cars, all the way to maybe in 10, 20 years' time, they are going to be the ones buying from the luxury panelists who are here as well. And the one thing I want to just finally touch upon for this question is, it concerns me in a way. I feel like young people are falling out of love with cars. And as someone who, as a kid, was obsessed with cars of all types, from vans to supercars, I find that there is more effort and more deliberate work needed by brands, whether it's dealers or whether it's OEMs, to connect to those younger audiences and give that emotional element. And finally, if you get the chance, there's a video on YouTube of Richard Hammond talking about what cars mean to him in terms of the freedom that they provide, in terms of the experiences that we have in them. And I feel like a lot of young people are missing out on that at the moment because the messaging, the connection emotionally, I think isn't there.
Do you see any evidence of that? I mean, it's kind of it's a worrying statement, isn't it, that the young people are not as into automotive as perhaps we are. I mean, what are you seeing when it comes to searches and what people are watching on YouTube, for example, that leads you to think that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's some interesting research European-wide that's done on this. And I think especially when you look at the reasons why, I mean, economics, the cost of it, insurance and whatnot, those all play a role. But there was a recent study that was done, I believe, in Europe. I think it was 54% of 18 to 24-year-olds said that they would be open to just using public transport or commuting or non-car life, basically. And like I said, a lot of other things play into that, but I really do think there's a substantial opportunity for brands and dealers, as we've seen through social media, to build that connection with those young people.
Let's move on to this vehicle ads. I know we've got a lot to cover. I mean, let's just start off with a general overview of what they are.
Absolutely. So, and I imagine your iPad might be buzzing with quite a few questions. So, vehicle ads, in a nutshell. How many of us, put your hand up if you've Googled something today, if I might ask?
Car Dealer magazine.
Fantastic. So Googling is part of our daily lives, daily routines. Now, when someone searches for a car, I was speaking earlier with the CEO, the founder of leasing.com, and we were talking about intent, user intent. When someone's looking for a car online, they have intent. And one of the focuses of search from the start has been to provide relevant information to user when they need it, the right message to the right user at the right time. And vehicle ads is the next evolution of that, really, for automotive. When you search for a vehicle online, for example, here we've got BMW SUVs for sale, it introduces a new visual, information-based section of search that's more interactive. It's a carousel people can scroll through, and it essentially gives more exposure to you as dealers, as OEMs, for your inventory specifically.
This is a solution that launched in the States, isn't it, first? And it's something that we've been following at Car Dealer Magazine, watching that develop. Just tell us a little bit about how that's been over there and how it's worked.
Yeah, absolutely, James. So it's been in the States for a couple years now, and we've seen really excellent success. And that's partly why it's been brought into Europe, Middle East, and Africa. It's going to be brought in there as well. And we're running it at the moment in closed pilot in the UK. We've seen great success, and I think specifically there have been two things that have worked. One on the consumer side and one on the advertiser or the brand or dealer side. From the consumer side, they really appreciate how simple and easy this is. We live in a world of retail and easy e-commerce. I think it was mentioned before, that we buy shoes, for example. The retail industry is arguably ahead of us in many ways. And this is one of those things that really aligns with a lot of other consumer behaviors. And the second thing from the advertiser side of things, and I'm sure it's going to be a topic you might ask about, from an efficiency side, it was mentioned earlier that the number one concern for dealers was cost, right? Can absolutely understand that. What this provides you as dealers is an opportunity to pre-qualify who it is that clicks on your ads. Because how many times, if you might have a regular ad, someone might look for a Mercedes A-Class, for example, that's used, they'll click on your ad, and then they might realize, oh no, I can't actually afford a Mercedes A-Class. But what this does is it surfaces the price, it surfaces the important information, the location, and it gives you a way to make sure you're getting qualified people into your website.
So a question, I've got a few questions of my own, as you can imagine, but a question just come in from the audience here, which I think is probably a good time to interject with. What are you guys going to do that's different to what Auto Trader are doing? Auto Trader dominant in this market, have been for many, many years. People are very used to going on Auto Trader and searching their cars. What are you going to do that's different to that?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think there's room for both. Auto Trader do excellent work there. We work a lot with Auto Trader as well. I think the key differentiating point here is that people are using Google as part of their daily lives, right? Now, personally, actually, I use Auto Trader as part of my daily life just for fun. I'm sure many of us do. Sort it high to low. You always find the supercars at the top. But the fact is that this brings cars and your inventory as dealers or OEMs closer to users. And that benefits you as a business, and that's what we hope to do.
So I understand there's some AI built into this platform. Explain how that works.
Yeah, absolutely. So machine learning and AI both play a significant role in this. And there are two things I'll briefly touch upon. I'll try and avoid going into too much detail because I could be monologuing here all day about bid strategies and whatnot. But one key thing to know is that when you spend money on Google, I don't need to tell you, you're not spending money for fun, right? You're spending because you get a return from it. And one of the key uses of machine learning in Google is what we call bid strategies. And in a nutshell, you tell the campaign that you run, I'm going to spend £100 a day. I want to get £150 of value from that, for example. And that's a key example of machine learning. And with AI, we're bringing more signals into that to make sure that the campaign runs specifically in accordance with your business goals. And the second part is about matching this user with the right car, for example. So, for example, here on the screen, you've got BMW SUVs for sale. If there is a user who has been looking quite a lot at an X3, for example, machine learning and AI take that into account, and it's more likely to show them an X3 because they know he's in the market or they're in the market for that.
As you can imagine, lots of questions coming in here, so I am going to focus on a couple of these to try and answer these people's questions in the room. Is this going to focus on new or used predominantly?
Who asked that question? I want to give you a big round of applause because that was one of the points, actually. So when this launched in the US, it was only used inventory, and then they introduced new. One of the key things about this launch in the UK for the beta at the moment is that it's new and used. So a lot of advertisers think it's just used, but actually you can include new inventory and take people to your configurator pages, for example.
And that carousel that we're seeing at the top here of the, this is another question that's coming from the audience. That carousel we're seeing at the top here, is that just going to be dominated by the likes of Auto Trader and Heycar and Motors and others, or are dealers going to have a chance to get in on the action?
Yes, excellent question. And this is one of the key things, I think, about advertising with Google as a whole is that, of course, there are elements like an auto trader, for example, their budget might be greater than some other brands. But when it comes to who is selected to be on the top, other things are taken into account. If you have a car that, according to AI and machine learning, is the right car for someone, whether you're a local dealer or whether you're a national dealer, it will be likely to surface for the user.
So, and that brings me on to this question. I mean, as a small independent, are they going to be able to compete with the big PLCs using this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the key thing on this, and we'll go on to it later on, I imagine, is around having the best practices set up with your campaign. You know, I think investment, of course, plays a role, but that's the same with broader Google advertising as well, right? Broader Google advertising has big players, small players, and the magic of Google, in my opinion, actually having worked with a lot of businesses of all size, is that it really helps smaller as well as larger businesses. It puts them on a leveler playing field.
I'll go back to some of my questions. What about consumers? What do they think of this? Do they like this way of looking and searching for cars?
Yeah, so far from the US and from initial UK beta performance, we see good interaction rates with the carousel. And I think the key thing is that for many users, it's surprisingly not that new. And what I mean by that is they're used to seeing, if you search for another product on Google, they're used to seeing a carousel at the top. And that, I think, is actually part of the magic of it, is that this is a new product, this is a new thing that appears, but users are already used to this. And because of that, they're adopting it very openly.
So can dealers feed their ads to you? I mean, how do they populate this?
Yeah, so the key to this campaign is your product feed. Now, for example, retailers who run shopping campaigns on Google, which are separate to this, they will input a product feed for whatever items they have in their shop. And for this, as dealers, as OEMs, you will input a feed of all of your inventory. And the feed is incredibly important. It's important to keep it fresh, to update it at least once a day, to include all the relevant information. And that is what powers what comes up in there.
Question here from the audience. How can they ensure that this is at the early part of the research stage of the consumer, or is it right at the end of the funnel when they've decided what car they want? How can they use this product to target all of those buyers?
Yeah, excellent question. So the magic of this is that it is a full funnel solution. So, for example, with Performance Max, if someone is searching for BMW SUVs for sale, it's possible that you will be able to appear on that carousel, but equally, if someone's searching maybe for an X3 2018 20D, there will also be an opportunity. And as part of what Google's bid strategies do, it also evaluates what end of the funnel is this person on. And if there's someone who has been looking up cars for example, months, who's giving all the signals of intent, it's possible then the campaign will bid slightly more for them to bring in them more likely for your business.
Lots of questions coming in about actually how the function's going to work. How's the feed going to work? So any tips on maintaining that feed and how they can get it to perform?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing, and it is on this page here, that if you Google what's at the bottom there, PMax Vehicle Onboarding Guide, there's a help center page that is incredibly helpful. That will, one would assume it's a help center page, but it essentially walks you through step by step how to set up your feeds and all the best practices for that. So I definitely recommend checking that out. But two things I would highlight right now is one, making sure you know the understanding of how feed policy works. So some of the brands we're working with, one of the challenges they've had is making sure their feed gets approved because there are quite rigorous policy requirements to make sure that users are getting the right information. So get familiar with that. And the second tip I would have is there are many businesses, partners, some of them might be in this room, who are experts in feeds. So find the right partner for your business, and that can help you quite a lot as well.
So this comes from a dealer's DMS?
Yes, it would. Yeah.
How about tips on making sure this performs and getting it set up? What practical advice can you give to the people in the room here who want to go back and use this when it's available, of course, which we will come on to?
So the one thing I've learned, this has been in open beta for a couple of months now, and the one thing I've noticed between the advertisers who succeed and the ones who finding it a little bit taking longer to adjust is their setup of their conversions. So with these campaigns, it's not just the case that you're driving one conversion, right? You could get someone to reserve a car. You could get someone to call you. You could get someone to send an inquiry to you. You could get someone to visit your dealership. There are a lot of different routes that this can bring you results by. And the key thing you need to make sure you do is tell the system what's worth what to you. What I've had is some advertisers at the start, they might, for example, say that a call is worth the same to them as an inquiry, just because they don't change the setting. Whereas obviously, an inquiry, perhaps, or a reservation, is likely worth more to you as a business. And what Google can do is we can take your priorities as a business. We can say a reservation of £100 on average for the business is worth, I don't know, £2,000, for example, whereas a call might be worth 100 quid for you. If you input that into your campaigns, you can then optimize for a return on investment. And that's the final thing, is that's one of the key things I think Google's trying to simplify a lot for businesses. Not to get lost in very small metrics like cost per clicks and kind of abstract things, but we want to talk in your language as dealers in terms of ROI. So that would be the main thing.
Having dabbled in trying to set up Google Ads myself in the past, it can be complicated. It's not an easy thing to do. I like to think of myself as reasonably IT literate, but it can be a struggle. Is this something that dealers can do themselves, or do they need to get a partner, an agency to do this for them to make it really work? Or can you empower them with the information that they can do it themselves?
Absolutely. So that page that I referred to previously, that is incredibly empowering. And I speak as someone, from a feed perspective, I'm no expert. My specialty is more in terms of the Google Ads platform itself. But that page that I referred to there, that goes step by step, and it's a really good guide. Now, the one thing I would say is that if you want to make sure that this lands, as well as possible, I just want to advise everyone to make sure that you feel comfortable and that you're not necessarily spending a lot of time guessing or winging it to a certain extent, because obviously time is valuable for you. So that would be where look at the help page, see what you can understand of that, and if you feel uncomfortable with that, that's where you go with partners.
Is it going to be affordable? What's an example cost for something like this?
So cost varies depending on campaigns. It's impossible to give an exact amount. The one thing I would say is that this has helped a lot of advertisers actually make their advertising more efficient. So what I referred to previously about helping you improve the quality of the people clicking to your website and improve your cost efficiency, that's one of the things that we have seen already. And the key thing from there is the bid strategy. So a lot of the advertisers I speak with, they tell me sometimes truthfully, I think sometimes not, if I can get a return on investment of 500% from Google, I'll put as much money as possible in it. And when we talk about costs, this is an important point because, like I said, no one invests in Google just for fun. You invest as a profit center. So when it comes to cost, I think the key thing really is your setup and what you want to get out of it. And then the cost can be essentially, once you get that ROI, the cost can be as much as you want to make profit, essentially.
Where does this fit into a dealer's marketing mix? I mean, they're spending huge amounts of money with the existing platforms that are out there. Is this just another bill, or does this supplement what they're doing, or does it replace it?
Great question. So, it's not necessarily, I wouldn't say that it replaces anything they're existingly doing. As I mentioned, the key thing really is this is intended to be a profit center for a business. When you invest £1 on this platform, we want you to make £3 because then you'll be happy with it and you'll continue investing in it. So I would really look at this as less of an additional cost. It's a new opportunity to find new customers and to meet new customers and ultimately to make more revenue as well for the business.
So talk to me about where this is at the moment. Like it's in beta testing, isn't it? And when's it come out of that? When's it going to be available to people in the room here today?
So final dates for opening up, they're not yet confirmed. You will hear about it when it is. But I would say at the moment, as you mentioned, it's in closed beta. And if anyone is interested in getting onto this beta here, the one thing I would say is reach out to your Google Teams, because the Google Teams will be able to submit you internally for allow listing. And if you don't know who your Google Teams are, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn and send me your Google Ads ID, and I can support you with that.
So any tips on getting really good results from this when they can use it?
I think there are three things I would highlight specifically other than what I've mentioned. So I've already mentioned bid strategy, I've already mentioned feed. There are three other things that are incredibly important. Firstly, with these campaigns, and it's a theme of machine learning and AI as a whole, the more you put in, the more quality you put in, the better quality you get out. So for example, the photos that you see here, make sure you input high quality assets of your vehicles. I'm sure everyone's already, that's no news to anyone. But inputting as many photos, different angles as possible into Google is incredibly important. It helps your campaigns perform. It helps your campaigns be cost efficient. Second thing, as well as that, would be make sure you're learning from your campaign. And one of the things you'll see in any campaign, such as the Performance Max with Vehicle Feeds campaign, there is a tab on Google called Insights. And I think it's one of the most underused tabs in the whole of the Google Ads platform. And whether you're into Google Ads or not, I recommend you go back, speak with your marketing manager. If it's not you who manages Google Ads, ask them to look into Insights. Because the Insights tab looks at who's looking at your ads, it's looking at who's converting in your ads, and it gives you such novel insights into your customer base. And I'll give you an example. I worked 2 years ago with a sports nutrition brand, and one of the things they found in their Insights tab, a year ago actually, it wasn't two, they found that their customers who are converting on a certain product were 10 times more likely than the average person to be interested in fast cars. 10 times. A sports nutrition brand. And what they were actually able to do with that, it sounds abstract, but they were actually able to incorporate that into their future creatives, and they were able to optimize, and that's a really successful campaign from that. So use the insights that you're getting about your customers and continue to improve. It's certainly not a set and forget kind of campaign.
And just a little bit of detail into how these actually work. Those adverts we're seeing at the top there, once the dealers put their details onto it, if you click through to that, does that expand into a full listing of that car with more pictures like you'd have on a other marketplace? And just talk to me about how those different calls to action that you mentioned work and how dealers can choose which ones they use.
Yeah, for sure. So when you click onto one of these ads, it will take the customer to your vehicle's landing page. So it takes them straight to that specific vehicle. When you put your mouse over it, it just becomes slightly bigger, but when they click, straight to your landing page. And the call to actions piece is incredibly important. So there are different things that Google Performance Max campaigns can optimize towards. Most relevant for dealers is, as we mentioned, it might be a call, it might be an inquiry, but one of the things, and it's with the theme of omnichannel, the fact that people are looking online and going in person, is these Performance Max campaigns can drive people to your dealerships. And that's through the power of Google Maps, getting directions, for example. For example, if you run one of these campaigns potentially as well, if someone's looking for car dealers on Google, if they're very high in the funnel, you can bid to appear as a sponsored at the top of that result. So there's a lot of other call to actions that you can set. And again, the key thing is really setting the values for each of them, telling Google what you value most. And that's really the key to success on those, how you select those call to actions, so to speak.
And we've talked about the US, we've talked about the fact that it's in beta testing here. I'm sure you don't want to go into the details of who's doing it, but what sort of feedback have you had from those partners who are using this at the moment?
So I think the feedback has been very good so far. I think one of the key things that I've seen is that the feed element is the one area I think some dealers are upskilling themselves on at the moment, because it's more of an e-commerce, it's seen previously as more of an e-commerce thing. So that's one thing that I think dealers are working on improving their capabilities on at the moment. Other than that, though, the results from dealers who have been able to get to that stage, it's been positive. In the USA, for example, we have a case study live with a dealer group called Ken Garth. They've got 66 dealerships. And after running these ads, they saw, I think, a 34% increase in their conversions and a 14% increase in their ROI. And keep your eyes peeled, because in the next couple of weeks, we've got some UK case studies to come as well, hopefully.
Just had a request if you could put that link back on the screen for the attendees. And just in a more broad sense, when it comes to dealers using Google as part of their marketing mix, and this is obviously clearly one part of that larger picture, any practical tips you can give the people in the room on what else they can do?
Yeah, absolutely. I think three things are really key when it comes to the broader Google marketing mix as well, right? So firstly is understanding where your customers are. And one of the major examples, it was talked earlier about social media, right? How important is social media to a brand? So when it comes to organic and non-organic, there's so many new platforms, especially, for example, vertical video. We have YouTube Shorts as well, which is one of Google's fastest growing products. So making sure you're adapting to those new formats, whether it's having vertical videos as well as horizontal. I think secondly is really mastering measurement, understanding what you're getting out of your investment with Google, because people in this room, you'll be investing a good amount with Google. So you want to make sure you can fully understand what you're getting out of it. And there's multiple ways in going into that. I could talk all day about that. Don't challenge me on that. But the third one is really about understanding your customer base, and especially nowadays with requirements around measurement and privacy, first-party data is incredibly important. And I think it was alluded to a couple of times before, but that would be the one thing. Once you have first-party data, and once you incorporate that into your online activity, it really gives you a competitive advantage if you can get a good grasp of that.
Mohammad, thank you very much for your time today. It's been absolutely fascinating to hear all about vehicle feeds, and I really appreciate you giving up your time. I know we've come to the end of the day, but I'm sure you're going to be around for a few minutes afterwards. If anybody wants to grab Mohammad, then please do. But firstly, just before I sum up today, a round of applause, please, for Mohammad.